Hey guys, this is Cyphus from Defense of the Patients. I just want to say thanks for listening and telling your friends. You guys are the best advertising that we could ask for as a show. If you'd like to continue to support DotP, consider the DotP Patreon. The Patreon's been completely revamped and we've added new prizes and new milestone goals. Prizes include immortalization on the DotP website, a chance to 1v1 mid Roland and prove you can take him on, and even a chance to be a DotP show host for an episode doing and talking about whatever you'd like. You can even change up the co-hosts. Our first milestone goal is $500 a month. When we hit it, Roland, Wazoo, and I will do a 12-hour-long live-streamed episode with amazing giveaways and fan phone calls all day long on the DotP hotline. You'll be talking right alongside with us on the show. Show your support at patreon.com/defense of the patients. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome to another Defense of the Patients. Today is another DotP one-on-one. I'm Cyphus, and I'm sitting down with Austin Capitalist Walsh. Welcome to the show, Cap.
Thank you very much, man. It's good to be back. I enjoyed my my last debut on this podcast. You guys put together a very good show, so glad to be back again.
You were a great guest. I listened to, because we knew we were going to have you back on, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't asking a ton of the same questions, you know. But went back and listened to that episode, and I think at the time your mindset, your goal was to start being to continue being the hardest working caster, that you were going to overtake OD Pixel just by sheer work effort alone.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel you're doing on that front? How's it going in that regard?
I think it's going all right. The biggest thing that I have, so I've realized after TI, right, I made main event and everything else, and that was sort of like my big goal, right, was to cast main event of the international. And once I made that, I wasn't really sure, like, okay, where do I go from here? Like, of course I want to go to the majors, and of course I want to cast a grand finals and all those sorts of things. But, you know, if I've already kind of reached my big end goal, like, what are some of the things I need to be doing now in between? You know, and looking forward, what do I need to do to continue this, make this like a full-time career, like no matter what happens with Dota 2 and everything else? And the answer has been branding, just getting my name out there, making more of a brand about my name. So I've been focusing on, at least trying to focus on that lately. As far as casting goes, I don't know. I'm still working at it and everything else. I'm gonna go through like
well, I mean, you're going to Shanghai, so
yeah. I'm before Shanghai, I'm gonna go through like kind of an intense like just prep session. Probably more so than I've done at least more so than I did for the Frankfurt major. I always go through these prep sessions, but I really want to try and put a lot of effort into this next one.
What's going to go into a prep session for you?
I usually write down a lot of different things. For the first time I did it was for ESL 1 Frankfurt, the first one that I went to, and that was, so I write down all the teams, all the players, all their best heroes, signature picks for certain players, special kind of strategies, any kind of like tidbits that can go along with a certain player. You know, something I can easily recollect. So you know, hey, X player is like you know, top 5 of, you know, Faceless Voids, and he also has a really big penis. You know, something like that. You know, you want to bring a little bit of personality to.
I know players. As a player, I'd be thrilled to hear that casted in a game. You know, I think you ought to throw that on. Just tack that on periodically.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, anything that can add a little bit of extra knowledge or analysis to the broadcast, or even if it's just like I know a lot of the players personally, if I have something about their personality that stands out to me that I want to be able to mention in the broadcast, or anything that makes it so the viewer really gets a feel of the players, because that's something that's oftentimes missing in when watching these broadcasts. Is you're just watching these heroes, you're watching the game go out, you don't get a whole lot of personality from the players until like after the throne explodes and they show the victory cam, and then oftentimes like, yeah, maybe some teams are really happy, but other teams are just like, okay, that was a good game.
Yeah. On to the
Gotta
next.
go on to the next one. Yeah, exactly. So they don't show a whole lot of emotion. There's nothing to really like for you as a viewer to latch onto and be
To
I
humanize.
like that person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of been, maybe one of our biggest complaints. We've talked about it a little bit, here and there on the show, but it's so weird when you're dealing with gaming in a professional capacity, because for so long it was just a hobby that attracted or stereotypically attracted the kind of awkward players, people who were exceptionally awkward and found solace in video games. Because of that awkwardness, or maybe shyness is a better way to put it over awkwardness. But so now when you get into this kind of professional sense, it's really weird to see those people, for obvious reasons, wind up being the pros, or at least a good share of them. I don't know. Do you think there's a negative correlation there for esports in general because of that, or do you think that? Or do you think it's just up to those who are involved in like the broadcasting side of things, the way that you are, to bring that human element?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it is very unfortunate, especially the Dota 2 scene. For whatever reason, Dota 2 just draws a lot of introverts. Whether it's like a lot of it goes into kind of the underground history of Dota. Oftentimes, you look at today's players, and they're the same kind of players that were playing all the way back in the original Dota, or perhaps very early on in Dota 2. So because of that kind of underground community, I guess that can maybe be some of the reason why we have so many introverts as pro players. But I mean, I'm a bit of an introvert. Like I definitely have. Like I turn it on for a broadcast, and I turn it on when I go to LAN events. Basically, I get like all the socializing I can out of my system, and then then I don't do any socializing until the next event, right? So I can completely understand, the draw of Dota 2 to introverts and that sort of thing. But I think players are a little bit short-sighted. They need to understand that. If you increase your brand, it makes you so much more valuable as a player. You can make more money. You have a longer lifespan as just a personality in the scene. And I think the only person who truly recognizes that is some of the EG players.
Sure.
Like PPD Universe with his videos on. I'm not sure how much he realized that.
Everybody's been raving about PPD's vlogs of late. that's become major media.
Yeah, exactly. It's like huge that he's doing that much work.
Yeah, and it humanizes, back to just that kind of element. It's you. I think we got into this a little bit with you the last time you were on the show, but when you guys are casting, you're helping to build the narrative of the game, and there are narratives that exist within individual games and over the course of a series, or maybe even over the course of a tournament. And you guys are adding to or helping construct that narrative as we go. But there's and that narrative is necessary because it kind of humanizes the game. It gives us as viewers something to kind of latch onto, to feel, or just to feel about, to have feelings in regards to. And you kind of need that with the players as well. And it's nice to see PPD, or someone in his position, start to give us something to latch onto, start to develop a relationship for good or ill.
Yeah, there's only so much a broadcaster can do and tell you, hey, this player's a really nice person. He helped me out once when I didn't understand something. And then, that is something, the viewer will take something out of that, but it's entirely different. It will have such a larger impact if that player actually, creates a video or does something, in the public eye that people get to see and experience themselves, and that will really help them latch on to that player, to the scene, everything else. It's just good for the health of the esports, really.
Yeah. Do you think that Twitch streams allow that to an extent, do you think we end up just kind of gawking at their skill and prowess? I mean, because you do see their faces. I mean, you get to see a player, maybe you get to see him rage a little bit in the cases of some players, but you do get that little bit of personal interaction with them, or perceived personal interaction with them. But do you think that's enough, or do you think we just get sidetracked by their skill?
I think that there's definitely the thing about streaming is that it will always or at least it's typically a bit top heavy. Like the biggest stars, the biggest names will always get the most amount of viewers, and then oftentimes the chat will just devolve into like Twitch memes and stuff. It's still good for that player, but when it comes to like other players, players who aren't going to be drawing like a whole lot of viewers, I think streaming definitely helps. But I think YouTube content is just something a bit more permanent and impactful if you put effort into it.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned earlier that you were working on branding for yourself. What's kind of gone into that for you? What are you adding to the mix that people can go out and find?
Essentially, right now, for the longest time, I've just kind of been figuring out what it is I want to do, because I guess I've realized a lot of different things about myself along this kind of journey. One of which was kind of recent is that I'm not really a person that's meant to be a personality. I have the talent and I'm meant to be a commentator, in that I'm meant to be like a sports broadcaster, and I have that kind of work ethic and such to make that work. But when it comes to being a personality, that's just something a bit different, right? That's like putting yourself out there and creating content and having the confidence to be able to go to make something entirely your own and be like, people will want to see that. People will want to hear me do these things, and so I've just been kind of trying to figure out what it is I want to do, and also gain the confidence to be able to do those things. Because oftentimes, what kind of stops me is I'm like, does anyone really give a shit what I have to say about on this issue or that sort of thing? But I just know I kind of have to make that jump and put out that content and grow my viewer base, or grow just like my fan base. I guess really what it is because if you look at someone like me compared to what's a like Pyrian Flax, right?
Sure.
That's somebody who's a personality who's set for life, right? Like
Yeah.
the way he set up. What happens to me if Dota 2 dies tomorrow? I'll have some fans that will want to see what I want to do and everything else, but no one's really attached to my brand enough to stick with me through like going to the next game. Like essentially, if Dota 2 died, I'd have to find another esports to commentate.
But I mean, and don't you think so do you think that might be the nature of esports, for time to come? Because we look at
Yes.
we look at StarCraft 2, say what you will about it. I know there are people out there who still are loving it, but it's fallen by the wayside. If we're being completely honest, it's not even. It's definitely not as popular as Dota, as League, or at least it's not attracting the money and the attention that those two MOBAs are. But at the same time, I suspect that if you did move on to something like Nexium or whatever the next big MOBA was, the undeveloped MOBA in this hypothetical, I suspect that your name would be recognized. I still think that your brand would be there. You don't necessarily feel that way, though?
I guess it's not something that I can rely very easily upon. It's not something that I can't just create my own content and live off of. I couldn't live off of my stream. I mean, maybe if like I put more effort into it and I ask people for donations. I keep my stream like very, very streamlined. I don't ask for donations. I don't do any pop-ups for subscribers or followers or any of that kind of shit, simply because I feel like I have a day job. I don't need the extra revenue. So if anybody wants to give me something, it's nice, but it's definitely not necessary. But as it is right now, I couldn't live off of my stream. I couldn't live off of my YouTube content. I couldn't live off of anything like that. I would have to look for a job as a professional commentator. Now, but something you talked about is that the way that esports is just going to be for the foreseeable future? I think so. The big difference. This is the thing that I really struggled with after TI was the difference between like what a sports broadcaster has and what an esports broadcaster has. A sports broadcaster focuses on his craft, and he can essentially make himself set for life off of just doing that. Esports broadcaster, it's much more about your personality and building up a brand than it is for a sports broadcaster. Just because for any sort of basketball or baseball, there's a set path before you, right? There's a structure
Yeah.
behind you. You know what the rules are. You know how to be able to make yourself get to the next step. You have people who have been there before, who are who are your higher ups, who tell you. Esports broadcasters don't have any of that. It's just like kind of the Wild West, and the only thing that's really truly supporting you is the community. And so you got to harness as much of the community's power as possible, and that's usually through branding.
What kind of efforts? What like some specific efforts that you've made to try to brand?
I put more effort into streaming more often and trying to be better at streaming because oftentimes when I used to stream, I would treat it as, I still do to a certain extent, but playing first and streaming secondary. The problem with that is I'm not a good enough player to be able, like I'm not 7.5K or something. I'm not a big pro player or anything like that. So when it comes to just playing the game, who really wants to watch that if they can watch Arteezy, right? Or hell, if they can watch Blitz,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
People are much better than me at the Dota game. So if I'm just being like I'm playing the game first and streaming second, then why are people watching me over other people? And so I've tried to put more effort into my streaming, let more of my personality go, even if it comes at the cost of focusing on the game and such, and also creating YouTube content. Honestly, a lot of this stuff I've just been solely thinking about it for a long time because I also have this very big. It just really goes against the grain for me in some way, but I don't want to be fake in any way. I want to do something that I want to do. I don't want to try and force something that I'm not enjoying, and that just goes along with everything, right? I think that's really one of my basic principles is that I'm always going to be kind of true to myself. I'm going to say something that's not very popular just because of the fact that I'm thinking it. I'm not going to, like, even if it comes at the cost of, like, some drama or something. Like, the recent, like, the caster drama with Loda and stuff. Yeah. Like, I'd seen that thing go around way too many times for me to just, like, sit on the sidelines and not say anything. And so, I let loose on Twitter and I said a lot of different things. And it didn't hurt me in any way. I think it might have helped. I'm not really sure. But
yeah, the whole good press, no bad press, good press sort of a thing.
Yeah, but it's just like that sort of thing can what if the community didn't like what I had to say and turned against me very sharply? That sort of thing can kind of hurt you.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I can only imagine you you send out a tweet and then about 15 seconds later you start wondering, is that the one that ends the career? Is that
Oh yeah, I mean I had a really salty ass tweet. Remember, like, all the way back at the TI4 EU hub, I was sitting back in the Join Dota studios working all day long essentially. Like I had nap breaks and I tuned in to watch the EU hub for TI4, and it was them. The couch stream was like the real big stream, but they put like no effort into the actual casting, and I was just like, "What the fuck? Why am I sitting in the studio doing all this shit?" And they're putting no effort into the actual casting, and I had a salty ass tweet, and that definitely like bit me in the ass. There was a lot of people who flamed me for it and didn't like me, and that hurt my brand and stuff. But it was what I was feeling at the time. It was a little salty, it was a little angry, but I would still make that sort of tweet every single time if I had to go back in time.
Well, and I think people appreciate someone being genuine. That's the. And if we're being honest, like that's the only reason we continue to do the show is we figure, hey, if we're being as genuine as we can along the way, somebody's going to appreciate that, because I feel like that's what I appreciate whenever I'm watching whenever I'm watching something, when I'm watching one of your casts. Like I know that I genuinely appreciate how genuinely passionate you are about it, and how much you care about the game or care about broadcasting the craft. How do you balance that sensation that you're an introvert though, with having to put yourself out there every time?
It's just exhausting usually afterwards. That's the biggest thing. I just kind of force myself. I mean, every introvert. Well, not every introvert. Some introverts will know, right? When all the way back in high school, like when it was time to socialize, you had to kind of turn it on in some way. And so I just got better and better at doing that throughout high school and throughout, yeah, going through the military. Actually, got me a lot of confidence. That was something that was really important for me. And the more confidence I had, the better I could turn it on, essentially. When it was time to be sociable, when it was time to be an active voice in a conversation or leading a broadcast or making a public speech, I had the kind of confidence to be able to back that up. And it just leaves you really drained afterwards, I think. That's
do you feel like it's something you trained yourself to overcome?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, most of my job has just been like force of will, I guess. I wanted something, and I wasn't like I don't have a whole lot of natural talent for commentating like someone like OD Pixel has, or Toby does. I think if I look at the top four broadcasters, I think it's actually very clear cut in my head. OD and Toby are like the really natural commentators who bring a lot of entertainment to the broadcasting, and they'll always be good at that. While LD and I have just had a lot of passion for the game. I'm not saying the other two haven't, but we've had passion for the game that led us down this path, where essentially we had to work in order to, work really hard to get through that basic amateur phase that we were in order to be where we're at now. LD created all of BTS, and that's amazing. That's like the biggest.
Yeah, I can't imagine what putting that kind of work in is like. I mean, then they do a good job, definitely. So, I mean, you mentioned, way back at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about, kind of having the highlights be casting at TI5, and obviously you're going to Shanghai, you've got the majors coming up, and wanting to kind of do this professionally, but you're probably, but there's a lot of stuff to do in between. What is that in between stuff like for you? I mean, you obviously TI5 and the majors are only 4 times a year at this point. Before that, TI was only once a year. How much work are you doing on the side? What are you doing in between? How do you keep yourself busy?
My work schedule is definitely much less. If this was like a year ago, I'd be saying, I'm just casting 24/7. If I have downtime, I'm playing Dota, but I'm just, casting. But now that we have Durka with us, and like that's just the perks of going up the ladder, right? Is that you don't have as much to do. So since I was able to kind of climb that ladder, I've been able to spend more time focusing like on streaming and that sort of thing. But that's like the biggest thing is like I'm doing streaming, I'm creating some YouTube content, and I'm still casting quite a bit. Durka obviously does the biggest load for Join Dota, but then it's just also a lot of prep work. Like I know that like it feels like Frankfurt wasn't that long ago, and then all of a sudden I'm going to Shanghai soon, and then after that I'm going to be going to Croatia for Dota Pit, and then ESL Manila, the Manila Major, ESL Frankfurt, like those are all coming around the corner. So I guess I treat these kind of downtimes as just a lot of prep as well. I'm always watching esports broadcasts. The funny thing is that a lot of being an esports broadcaster looks like just really silly. It just looks like the kind of the stuff that you do on your regular downtime. It's like you watch Twitch streams, you stream yourself, you play the video game, stuff like that. But that's all. I treat it all as prep work. When I'm listening to, I go out of my way and listen to League of Legends broadcasts. I watch LCS quite a bit. I listen to StarCraft 2 anytime Artosis and Tasteless are casting. I try and get a listen in on that because they always offer me ideas about what I like in a broadcast, what I don't like in a broadcast, and how to take some of those things that I hear that I really enjoy and make them my own. Try and do my own things. Whether that's just simple things like a caster used a word that I actually really enjoyed. I was like, that's a very good descriptive word. I want to be able to bring that into my own broadcast. Or it's certain voice techniques that you'll hear something, and I was like, the way that he lifted up his tone towards the end of calling that action actually created a lot of extra hype, and that was really cool. I'm going to try and incorporate that into my own thing. It all look from the outside perspective is just you bullshitting around. But for me, it's all prep work.
Yeah. So I mean, would you say that or is that the majority of a cast is kind of a maybe a premeditated construction, or or how much of it is a premeditated construction as compared to you kind of instantaneously responding on the spot?
I would say it's like 80% on the spot and 20% like premeditated, crafted thing, like the things you actually say. The What I would more compare it to is like I don't know, like it's like being a wizard in D&D, right? You just load up your spell book with a bunch of spells
Sure.
beforehand, right? Before the day starts, you load that thing up with as many spells as you can. You have the right idea, and then when you get into the combat, you never know what's going to happen. You just kind of have to throw things out. Yeah. The important thing is to have something to fall back on. So to know that I have something in my vocabulary. Eviscerated was a word that I was recently like. I was like, damn. I was like, I read it, I read it somewhere. I was like, eviscerated, and of course I knew the word before, but I was like, I forgot how much I like that word. Saying it is just saying it out loud sounds really good. The next time I get a chance to say a lichen or ursa or something like that is in a game, I'm gonna make sure to use that action word, eviscerated, and that'll be something that adds to the broadcast. So it's not necessarily like before the game I'm thinking, I'm gonna make this joke and say this phrase or XYZ. It's just all kind of loaded in the back of your head, and then as the game goes on, you pull that out, and you're like, oh shit, there's an Ursa bear tearing somebody's ass up. God, fuck, he's getting eviscerated. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that D&D analogy. For anybody out there who plays, that is maybe the perfect analogy. You bringing out whatever makes sense at the time. Absolutely, that's great. So, are you looking forward to Shanghai? Are you excited about it?
To be honest with you, I'm a little bit hesitant, just because I've never been to mainland China, and of course all the Western players always complain about it.
Well, and they all got sick last time, or they all got exactly. At MDL. We heard about that.
So I'm not necessarily looking forward to that part. I've been to Taiwan. That was fantastic. I had no problem with that. But I'm not necessarily looking forward to being at mainland China. That being said, I'm always hyped for a major. I can't wait to be. It's going to be different, obviously, because it's going to be the least hype of the majors from an English broadcaster's perspective, because the crowd isn't English, so they're not. You don't have fans there to be able to talk to, and there's also. You're also not the main caster. Like, it's not your voice going around through the stage, so there's a lot less hype. There is something about being a broadcaster and being there live in the stadium and being able to hear all the fans shouting and knowing that it's your voice that they're hearing. Mm-hmm. It lends you a lot of energy, and you can just take that and run with it. There's less energy when you know that you're not the main caster.
I mean, do you feel like that has a negative impact on your cast, or do you feel like you're able to kind of work through that?
No, I would say that, like, it oftentimes just gives you, like, you'll still be able to cast 100%, but it's like the crowd gives you an extra 5% out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just something a little bit special, I guess. Because I've experienced this before, where when I'm casting and the audience is, like, when I went to Taiwan, I was not the primary caster, obviously, and I experienced that, and I realized, it is just a bit different. But no, I think honestly, you just gotta have genuine passion for the game, because if you're like relying on the crowd or something like that to be able to give you that kind of hype or something, then you're obviously not passionate about the game itself. Because I get just as goddamn excited when I'm at ESL One Frankfurt, excluding the 5% for the crowd. I get just as excited casting the dumbass Gigabyte Challenge, Tier 3 Team A versus Tier 3 Team B, and the game goes, like, really, really down to the wire and super, super, like, super clutch ending, oh my god, that was fantastic. I get just as hyped with that as I do with the ESL1 Frankfurt EG versus Secret. If you're a fan of the game, then you will look past the teams or the crowd or anything like that and just be genuinely excited for the game.
So, what do you prefer? Because playing or casting? Because I recently started. Not recently, but for the qualifier matches for Shanghai, Purge took and posted all of the videos of you guys, VEC, Vegetable Esports Club, playing together in those qualifier matches, and it was, in my mind, that was maybe the most brilliant thing that anybody's ever done. If you ever talk to Purge, not that it will mean anything to him, but I think that was maybe the most brilliant thing I've ever seen, because we got to hear your behind-the-scenes banter in that Captain's Mode draft, in that qualifier. And, I mean, you guys are obviously all, relatively well-known Dota 2 personalities. And it offered some great insight, not just into the way you guys think about the game, but getting back to that whole humanization element. It was nice to see. Mm-hmm. It was nice to see your camaraderie and all of you play, and at least for me, because I haven't stopped by your stream up until actually earlier today. I noticed that you were streaming and hopped on before we did this interview. But for me, that was like my first exposure to you as a player. To Purge, playing with people that he's trying to be competitive with. I mean, obviously that was a good time, or I hope for you it was a good time, but do you prefer playing, or would you rather be casting?
It's not even a question, man. I would always rather be playing. When I'm casting games, I go home and I'm just like, damn, I want to play some Dota now. The thing is, and I hope that it's that way for most casters as well, because that's, again, the thing. It just means you genuinely love the game. I would say that, if you're a caster of the game, you should probably always want to be playing rather than casting, just because. And also, I used to play competitively. I was not very good. Clearly, I didn't make it anywhere. I was on some tier 3 team. If you look up my name as a player, I show up on some wiki page under the squad Gamers University, which was probably one of the least was probably one of the most garbage teams I was ever on. In fact, no. Somebody came from that. ZYZZ. Ziz. He came from that team, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I was like, motherfucker, I used to play with him. That's amazing. But at the time, we were total garbage. But I used to play competitively in Dota 1, Heroes of Newerth, and early days of Dota 2. And despite, I wish I could have put more effort into it. I just didn't have time. Often, that will always be my biggest regret, is that I did not put more effort into becoming a player, because I will always want to be. I would much rather, in a heartbeat, I would trade spaces. I would be a pro player if I could, rather than be a caster. But unfortunately, I'm not very gifted when it comes to that. I'm definitely no Samael, nor if I put in I didn't take, if I had done something like Eternal Envy had, and taken a year off and just solely focused on becoming a player or something, I wouldn't have those same kind of regrets. Even if I didn't make it, at least I would have put in the effort to try and pursue that. But
that kind of reminds me of a comment I think I read from you talking about that there's a certain threshold of natural talent that's required before you could ever even consider going pro. It may, and correct me if I'm misquoting here, but that, calibrating at at a higher MMR, but probably in that 5K, or maybe I think it was you correcting to 6 or 7K, maybe jokingly, but that you kind of had to hit that threshold with just a natural talent before you could really sit down and focus on becoming a pro.
Yeah, I mean, for everybody out there who's oh, the trench. Somebody actually once told me that, it was on Twitter or something, that there are potential pro players that are stuck in the 3K or 4K trench or whatever. The truth of the matter is, if you are not good enough to be able to, and I'll completely stand by, if you are not good enough to, in 100% seriousness, try to get yourself to 6.5 to 7K I don't think you'll ever be a good pro player. Now, there are going to be some very, very extreme exceptions, and that's going to be people who are just, these are going to be your captains, who are extremely strategically gifted and really understand the game through and through, but just lack all mechanical talent. Right, and I think you can look towards, there's a number of captains in Dota 2 where oftentimes you'll see that the captain is never the star player in Dota 2, or if that is the case, that that's like a godlike player or something. Oftentimes the captain, from a player perspective, is the least mechanically gifted, but he just brings everything else to the table that's so goddamn important to Dota 2. All the strategy, all the drafting, all that sort of thing, the in-game calls. That makes up like 70% of the game itself. So much rests on their shoulders, but they're probably not the most mechanically gifted. So that's going to be your extreme examples. But if you can't make it to 6.5K or 7K, I would say at least 7K, then you probably are not meant to be a pro player. And you know what? I'm saying this from experience. I can't make it to 7. I could barely fucking keep 6K. As much as I would love to be a pro player, I know I just can't. Especially nowadays. Like, back in the day, if I'd put in effort, I probably could have been a mediocre pro player at the time. But if you look at today's talent, like, everything's just getting better and better, right? As the esports gets big. And more people want to be a professional player. Just that alone. There can only be so many pro players in the world. If somebody like fucking Sumail or Miracle shows up, you can't beat those guys. I'm sorry, you just can't compare to them. No matter how hard you try, there's something just special about they are like savants in a way, where they just have something very special that allows them to be able to perform at this highest 0.0000001% level that you just can't hope to reach. So, I'm speaking from experience. Believe me, if I wish it was just all it took was just like hard work and effort. Otherwise, I would quit tomorrow. I would quit my casting job tomorrow, and I would go and try and be a pro player. But I know from experience that I realize my own limits, and I know that I cannot be as fast as many of these players are. I am not as strategically gifted as someone like PBD or Puppy, and so I know that my role is going to be on the chair. Calling the action or analyzing the plays, and you know what? I'm happy with that. At least I still get to be able to experience the game I love in some way.
So, hey, you guys came pretty close with Vec. I mean, that was impressive. Some of those games were truly impressive. What was that like? From your perspective, how close did you feel like you guys actually were to qualifying?
I don't think we ever really thought that we would take down the last two behemoths. I don't think we really thought that we would beat Unknown or that we would beat Elite Wolves. That would just be too beyond, because we hadn't practiced at all. We'd like played maybe 2 scrims before the actual qualifier or something like that. There's no way that we would have had to get super, super lucky in order to beat established teams with players that had high mechanical amount of talent and had also large amounts of preparation. There's no way we should be able to go that far. So honestly, I think I was just amazed enough that we managed to take a game off of. That was hype as all fuck.
I was gonna say that game was so much fun to watch. I could feel the like giddiness in your voices whenever you guys were getting close to taking that game. And even just I think it was you who typed into all chat like beat by casters.
Oh yeah, because they were clowning on us. They were doing item dropping and shit. They did something else. I can't remember what it was. So it's like, all right, you started this. So a little bit of healthy flame and shit talking. Because I'm saying that. I'm not thinking we're gonna win game 3. I know we're gonna lose. I'm not like going out there and be like, oh, we got you guys' number. I know we're gonna lose the next game, but at least we got to smack them down or something.
Hey, at least from a viewer's perspective, it looked like you guys did more than holding your own in those games. They were very entertaining to watch. And just like I said, so entertaining to hear the banter between all of you guys and the calls. It was watching you play Spirit Breaker in particular that got me on a good Spirit Breaker run myself.
Oh yeah, that was so much fun. That was probably one of the moments that showed up on Reddit where I made that charge to hit the Queen of Pain when she came back down from Mules. I was like, that's the thing. That's why I want to be a pro player. It's like moments like those that you could just get so hyped up about. You know, when you make a play like that, and you're just like, it's the best feeling in the world. Especially if you know other people are watching, and you know you've won your team a fight like that. It's like it's one of the best feelings you can get, man. So that's why I'd always love to be a pro player. But yeah, VEC was tons of fun, and honestly, I think that we're like kind of some of the only people who can actually do something like that. And I really hope we don't squander that opportunity, because I think that people are still very interested in that sort of setup, because no other team is going to do something like that, right? Like every other team has like a stake in it. You know, this is their kind of their livelihood, so they're never going to risk talking about a draft in a stream or something like that. You know, they're never going to do something like that. So,
I hope to see you guys at the Manila qualifiers. I'll be disappointed if you aren't.
I'm fairly certain we are. I mean, we're still actually playing. We play in the Join Dota League. We play in Division 2 of Europe, where we've gotten smashed so far. We lost to a pretty damn good team too. They're like all 7K players and stuff. HWA, and then we also lost to someone else that I can't remember. But they're also like very good. Those are the top 2 teams of the league. So we're still playing and stuff, but I really think that we could do a lot more with this kind of opportunity.
Yeah, do you feel like any of the members of VEC could have the potential to be pro players, but maybe aren't pursuing that, maybe to their own detriment, or do you think that you guys, is your general feeling that, hey, yeah, maybe we should all be personalities, or maybe we can't really, or maybe it's not possible for us to pursue this professionally?
It's hard to say. You can definitely see that. So the best person on Veggie Esports is Merlini. That was when we were doing our qualifier. We've kind of changed up our roster, so we have like now a 9-person roster or something like that. But it also includes Blitz. Those are the only 2 people that I would say could be pro players. Like I think they could very easily be on like on a tier 2 team. And being a tier 2 team in Dota 2, like if you can make it to the major, if you can make it to TI, that's actually well worth it. But it takes, but if you look at their positions in the Dota 2 scene, I would say that they're probably, it's probably better for them to be personalities. I'm not sure if either Merlini or Blitz could truly be in a tier 1 team. And honestly, a lot of that just comes down to team makeup and attitude and so many other different factors that go beyond just being a player.
Yeah, for sure. So say Dota 2 we're gone tomorrow, and you decided you weren't going to pursue any more esports related career paths. What would you do? Where are your interests outside of Dota 2, outside of broadcasting?
Oh God. Okay, so we'll start within broadcasting. I'll just say that I would probably go over to something like Overwatch, I guess. I don't know. Like, I was really hyped for that game, and everyone told me it was garbage, so I have yet to even play it. But I might try and get into the arms of Blizzard, because if you're gonna be a part of any broadcasting scene, it's probably good to be in Blizzard's arms.
Yeah, they're definitely ramping up.
Yeah. Other than that, if it was outside of like esports broadcasting entirely, I have no clue. Honestly, this is why like I put so much effort into thinking like, how do I make this a long-term career? Because I dropped out of college and joined the military, and then I dropped out of the military in order to get this job. So I'm kind of like in a way all in on esports broadcasting. So
Well, it seems to have paid off for you so far. I mean,
Mhm.
you definitely you've become a quasi, and I only use quasi because it's all esports related and whatnot. But you've become a quasi celebrity in that regard. Um, I mean, surely you get kind of bombarded by folks whenever you go to these events. I would imagine even at Shanghai, there are going to be some folks that walk up to you and want to talk to capitalists and want to spend some time with capitalists.
Oh yeah, I mean it's been well worth like everything that I sacrificed. Like I had a great job, you know. I had to lead the I had to apply for early discharge in order to move to Berlin to be a part of a company called Freaks for You. That's a story for another time, but it was basic. It was definitely worth everything that I sacrificed in order to get this job, and that's why I want so kind of so desperately in order to keep it.
Well, I think you'd mentioned on the last show that if you had to do the military portion of it all over again, you still would. I mean, do you not think you would want to try to maybe, skip the military next time around and go right for the esports, or do you feel like that was kind of a necessary part of your life in order to be able to pursue esports?
That's really tough because then I have to actually because I guess in that context I'm just talking about like purely military yes no. And in which case, yeah, if I went back in time, yeah, I would do it. But if I compare it to like what if instead of going into the military you dropped out of college in order to put everything into being a pro player? That I probably, if I went back in time, I would probably try and be a pro player first because that is my biggest regret. And then if that didn't work out after a year, then I would put everything into casting. But
Do you think age is a factor for pro players? I mean, do you think because obviously in traditional sports, the human body just kind of starts to deteriorate after a certain point, and maybe you play baseball and you get lucky and you can play into your late 30s, like a Cal Ripken or something. But with football, I mean, seeing a guy in his 30s is almost unheard of. But with esports, it feels like, well, there's not that much physically strenuous activity going on, but at the same time, maybe age still is a factor. Right? I don't know. How do you come down on that? Do you think you would have to go back in time in order to have that shot at being a pro player, or do you think if you realistically stopped right now and just focused on doing that, is that at all a possibility?
I don't think that age is as big of a factor as probably some people make it out to be. I think that it's like if you're gonna compare it to like traditional sports broadcast, like sports, it's the drop off is obviously much less severe. I think, especially for a game like Dota 2, there's probably no issue with being 25, 30, even 35, and being a pro player. You won't be as good probably just because your reflexes probably slow down, right?
Sure.
Like people have said that to me. Oh, after 25, your reflexes. I'm sure that's a problem, but that can easily be, I think, overcome. And I mean, I'm no like there's probably whole entire professions that are made out of this. So I'm not somebody who really knows, but I'm sure there's some way that you can train that sort of thing in order to keep your reaction time very high and your hand-eye coordination and things like that. So I'm sure there's ways to stave off
But it
the inevitable decay of time.
but it certainly helps to be a young. You think it would help drastically, probably, to start at the very least start at a young age.
Yeah, I mean, well, the biggest thing about young age when it comes to esports is more the fact that you have time to be able to essentially throw away your life, right?
Sure.
So for somebody like Eternal Envy, if they took a year off of school and it didn't work out, well, you lost a year of time, but that's okay. You're still living with your parents. You're gonna go right back to university, et cetera, et cetera. If you're 30, it's like you're kind of at that point in time where you got to figure your shit out, right?
Yeah.
And you don't really have a year to think about that because you want to be able to get married and have a family, and you want to be able to support your kid and build up an inheritance for them and secure your own financial, et cetera, blah 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 blah. All the adult woes of
Yeah.
the
Sure.
world are kind of weighing you down. So I think that's really the biggest thing is about being young in esports. It's just the fact that you start when you're sometimes like in high school, like RTZ or Zai or those kind of guys, where you start and your life really hasn't begun yet, and you already have found your career in a way, and you're able to sink as much time as you want because that's just a passion of yours, and that's the benefits of youth is that you can do something like that.
So I know you were I know you were raised primarily by your mother growing up. So how did she, you talk about parent, like, of course you're crashing out living with your parents if you waste that year of your life. But I imagine a lot of parents probably aren't too keen on their kids taking a year off to pursue esports or pursue a video game. What was your mom's reaction like whenever you dropped out of the military to go pursue this casting career? Was she kind of standoffish? Was she kind of worried?
No. My mom's the best. Honestly, my whole family has always been very supportive. So while early on, like teenager and that sort of thing, it was the typical like, why are you gaming so much, all that sort of thing. But my mom and the rest of my family has always been super supportive in that regard. Like my dad doesn't. I don't think my dad still does not truly understand my job. But he's always been supportive nonetheless. And honestly, I'm just blessed in so many different ways, and that I know that if something does, fail, I can go back to my mom, and I can go back and to live with her. But I also have like financial opportunities when it comes to my mom. Like my mom and I are going into property together. That's what I use my TI money for. I'm going to be sending her money so that we're going into property together. So we have this system of rentals. So I'm very blessed that I have a good system behind me, essentially good financial,
good solid
family
support structure.
Yeah, exactly.
And property is a good investment. That's the old Tony Soprano line. You invest in land because God ain't making any more of it.
yeah, exactly. Well, there's always somebody looking for a cheap place to rent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so before I let you go, you've got Shanghai coming up, which surely everybody listening to the show understands how the importance of the Shanghai Major. What else is coming up on the horizon for you beyond Shanghai?
I guess right after that we have Dota Pit with Croatia. But for me personally, I guess it's just. I just kind of grind it out from event to event. Just this cycle of study and everything else. But for me, I think that the next thing is really figuring out my content and coming up with a content plan and creating something that will.
I should have asked you this before. What kind of content do you want to create? Like, are you talking doing something beyond streaming Dota? Do you want to like get what sort of extracurricular content are you looking to provide?
The easy stuff is vlogs, just because I like to talk about a lot, and I'm pretty opinionated on certain things. So that's the start. Like I did a vlog on the whole, like when Loda made his comments and stuff. I did a vlog on that. But also other things when it comes to creating like talk shows are also another thing. I want to do some sort of talk show, I think, with Blitz. I think that would be really enjoyable. But also just creating some Dota 2 content that is perhaps a bit lacking. I don't think there are too many, because pro players are always like very greedy in when it comes to the knowledge of the game. They like to hoard it sometimes. So because no pro players are putting out any good analysis or anything like that, I think there is an opening there for someone like me to perhaps create some content there. Honestly, I'm probably just going to be throwing a lot of things against the wall and just seeing what sticks.
Yeah, definitely.
Ultimately, I just want to be able to create content that people enjoy.
Well, hey, if you guys want to find out what Cap's up to and what kind of content he ends up producing, you follow him on Twitter. He's at Dota Capitalist. Check out that Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Dota Capitalist. And thanks for coming on the show. And it's nice to hear more kind of long form from you. Your thoughts on the scene and moving forward as a caster. This has been an interesting interview. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You made a great interview as you did last time, and always happy to be on the show.
Well, thank you again. If you guys want to find us, we're at .p_show on Twitter. Defenseofthepatients.com is the website. Search for Defense of the Patients on iTunes, Stitcher, all your favorite podcast apps. And check out the in-houses, folks. We're doing those through the defenseofthepatients.com. Just click on the ladders tab. Grouty, he's a .pog at this point. He's been putting together a little ELO system. All the rules and everything are explained on that, and we do the in-houses every Thursday and Saturday night. So I think that's all I'm going to plug on this show. So thank you once more, Capitalist, for coming on the show, and good luck and have fun in Shanghai.
Thank you very much, man.
And until next time, this is Cyphus for Capitalist saying good luck and Godspeed.